Snow drifted gently through the air, covering the streets of Moscow in a pale blanket of silence. Neon lights flickered across the grand avenues, reflecting in the icy puddles left by passing cars. Among the towering buildings, a small figure walked quickly, her breath forming clouds in the cold night. Her name was Anastasia Ivanova. To most people, she looked like a quiet young woman on her way home. But beneath that calm appearance lay a secret that few knew. Anastasia carried her backpack tightly. Inside was not only her laptop, but the weight of an identity carefully hidden for years. She was not simply a gamer. She was the reigning champion of one of the most prestigious esports tournaments in the city. Online, players from every corner of Russia respected her name, though they never truly knew who she was. Tonight, Anastasia would step into the same tournament once again. But this time, she planned to arrive differently. No one would see her as the hidden champion. She wanted to walk into the crowded arena as an ordinary girl, unnoticed, invisible among the crowd. As she neared the massive gaming center, the sound of laughter and chatter grew louder. Groups of young men huddled outside, exchanging jokes, smoking, their voices echoing against the cold stone walls. When Anastasia passed by, their eyes followed her. One of them, Dmitri, smirked and nudged his friend Sergei. "Look at her. Probably here to watch her boyfriend play," Dmitri said, loud enough for her to hear. Sergei chuckled. "She will not last around if she ever touches a keyboard." Anastasia ignored their words, but her heart tightened. Mikhail, another in their group, blocked her way briefly and asked, "Lost, little girl? The shopping mall is down the street." His tone was mocking, and the others burst into laughter. Without answering, Anastasia slipped past them and entered the building. Inside, the bright lights of the tournament arena welcomed her. Screens glowed with colors, the sound of digital battles filling the air, and hundreds of spectators crowded the seats. No one knew yet who she was. No one guessed that tonight, she would change the way they looked at her forever. The tournament hall was alive with energy. Rows of computers lined the stage, each glowing like a beacon beneath the harsh spotlights. Spectators pressed together in the stands, their cheers blending with the rapid clicking of keyboards and the sharp shouts of competitors. For anyone walking in, it felt like stepping into another world. Anastasia moved through the crowd silently, her hood still up, her eyes scanning the grand stage. The announcer's voice boomed through the loudspeakers, welcoming players and hyping the matches to come. No one looked twice at her. She was just another spectator, or so they thought. She found a quiet corner near the back and sat down. From there she could see Dmitri and his friends warming up. They sat at their stations, joking loudly, their arrogance spilling into the air. Dmitri cracked his knuckles dramatically while Sergei leaned back in his chair, grinning at the audience as if the victory was already his. Anastasia remembered their words outside, the mocking laughter. It stung more than she wanted to admit. She clenched her fists beneath the table, whispering to herself, "Tonight you will see me." The first rounds began. Teams battled furiously, the sound of commentators rising with every kill, every sudden reversal. Players' names flashed across the giant screen above the stage, each victory sending ripples of excitement through the audience. Anastasia watched carefully. She studied their strategies, the patterns in their movements. Dmitri was aggressive, always rushing forward without fear. Sergei relied on tricks, often setting traps to corner his enemies. Mikhail was slower, but steady, acting as the shield for his team. To the casual eye, they looked unbeatable. To Anastasia, their weaknesses were already clear. The time ticked closer to her reveal. She felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. Soon, her hidden identity would no longer be safe. Soon, she would step from the shadows and face them on equal ground. Backstage, an organizer called out for the next group of players. Anastasia rose from her seat, her heart pounding. She walked towards a stage entrance, her steps echoing softly against the floor. The moment she crossed that line, there would be no turning back. The backstage corridor was narrow, filled with cables and the low hum of machines. Anastasia adjusted her headset as she approached the officials waiting near the entrance. One of them checked her name on the list. "Player tag," the official asked. Anastasia lowered her hood and replied quietly, "Valina." The official froze for a second, eyes widening. He immediately signaled to his colleague. The legendary name had been spoken. Valina, the undefeated champion of last year, the ghost who had dismantled every opponent without showing her face. And here she was, in the flesh. The news traveled fast. Murmurs rose through the crowd, then whispers grew into gasps. The commentators on stage struggled to confirm what they had just heard. "Ladies and gentlemen," one voice thundered, "we have breaking news. Returning to defend her crown, the reigning champion, Valina, is here tonight." The audience erupted. The air shook with applause and shouts. Cameras turned towards the stage in trance as Anastasia stepped out, her hood finally down, her calm face bathed in the bright lights. On the other side, Dmitri and his team looked stunned. Sergei's grin faltered, Mikhail's jaw tightened, and Dmitri's hands froze over his keyboard. None of them had expected the quiet girl from outside to be the very player they had spoken of with grudging respect for months. Anastasia sat at her station, placing her hands gently on the keyboard. Her heart raced, but her face betrayed nothing. She knew the battle ahead would not only be about points or kills. It would be about pride, respect, and the silent strength she had guarded for so long. The match countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The screen lit up as the first round started. The audience leaned forward, every pair of eyes fixed on the monitors. Anastasia's avatar emerged into the digital battlefield, her movements precise and fluid. She wasted no time. Dmitri's team spread across the map with confidence, each of them believing their dominance would hold. Dmitri charged forward, Sergei laid traps along the corridors, and Mikhail took the defensive ground. Their voices echoed across the hall as they barked commands at one another.
Anastasia said nothing.
She played with silence, her mind calculating, anticipating their steps as if she had known them all her life. Her fingers danced across the keys, every motion deliberate. Within minutes, she dismantled Sergei's first trap, outmaneuvered Dmitri's reckless assault, and cornered Mikhail in a dead zone. The crowd roared. Commentators shouted over one another, unable to contain the excitement. Valina has turned their strategy inside out. What a display. On stage, Dmitri cursed loudly, slamming his desk. His arrogance was starting to crack. Sergei muttered under his breath, adjusting his headset nervously. Mikhail clenched his teeth, already realizing that their usual tricks would not be enough tonight. But Anastasia was only warming up. She was not here to scrape through. She was here to prove a point that would echo beyond Moscow, beyond Russia, into the entire world of competitive gaming. The second and third rounds unfolded with increasing intensity. Dmitri's team adapted, their arrogance slowly shifting into desperation. They tried doubling their defenses, setting ambushes, even targeting Anastasia with everything they had. Yet every time she slipped through. Her strategies were unpredictable, her timing flawless. To the audience, it was like watching a grandmaster playing chess against eager amateurs. To Dmitri and his friends, it was torture. Frustration boiled over. Dmitri shouted across the stage, his voice carrying through the microphones. "You think this proves anything? You got lucky." The crowd booed him, but Anastasia did not respond. She did not need words. Her silence was more powerful than any insult. She let her gameplay speak, striking again with surgical precision. Between rounds, she closed her eyes briefly. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was more than a match. It was her statement. Every woman who had ever been told she did not belong in gaming was watching through her. And she would not let them down. By the fifth round, Dmitri's team began to fracture. Their communication faltered. Sergei snapped at Mikhail for missing a defensive play. Dmitri ignored his teammates and rushed forward alone. Mikhail tried to hold the line, but his movements grew slower, his hands trembling under the pressure. Anastasia exploited every weakness. She lured Sergei into his own trap, eliminating him with cruel precision. She baited Dmitri into overextending, then cut him down in full view of the crowd. Finally, she cornered Mikhail, his avatar surrounded, nowhere to escape. The arena erupted once more. The commentators could barely keep up. Valina is dismantling them piece by piece. This is not just skill, this is mastery. On stage, Dmitri's face was red with rage. He ripped off his headset for a moment, glaring at Anastasia as if his eyes alone could burn her. She did not look back. She simply readied herself for the next round, her focus unshaken. The sixth round began differently. Dmitri and his team stopped rushing. They slowed down, their movements cautious, deliberate. It was clear they had realized brute force would not win. They were now trying to think like her. For the first time, Anastasia felt pressure. Their coordination was tighter, their defense more disciplined. They managed to corner her once, forcing her to retreat. The crowd gasped. Could the reigning champion actually fall? Anastasia breathed steadily, refusing to panic. She studied their shift and rhythm. They were learning, but they were still predictable. She only needed patience. The round dragged on, longer than any before. Sweat trickled down Dmitri's forehead, Sergei's hands shook, and Mikhail bit his lip. Anastasia waited for her opening. When it came, she struck swiftly, eliminating Sergei first, then turning the tide in seconds. The crowd exploded in cheers. Anastasia had survived their best effort. The momentum was hers again. Between rounds, the arena grew quieter. Spectators leaned in, their voices hushed, waiting for the climax. Even the commentators lowered their tone, building suspense with every word. Anastasia sat still, her eyes fixed on the screen. She could sense the end approaching. Victory was close, yet she knew Dmitri would not surrender easily. His pride was too large, his ego too fragile. He would fight until his last breath. She glanced briefly at him. His face was twisted with fury, his knuckles white as he gripped the mouse. Sergei avoided eye contact, his confidence drained. Mikhail looked pale, his shoulders heavy with defeat. And yet, the final rounds had to be played. Nothing was guaranteed. One mistake, and everything could crumble. Anastasia inhaled deeply, centering herself. She had come too far to falter now. Between rounds, the arena grew quieter. Spectators leaned in, their voices hushed, waiting for the climax. Even the commentators lowered their tone, building suspense with every word. Anastasia sat still, her eyes fixed on the screen. She could sense the end approaching. Victory was close, yet she knew Dmitri would not surrender easily. His pride was too large, his ego too fragile. He would fight until his last breath. She glanced briefly at him. His face was twisted with fury, his knuckles white as he gripped the mouse. Sergei avoided eye contact, his confidence strained. Mikhail looked pale, his shoulders heavy with defeat. And yet, the final rounds had to be played. Nothing was guaranteed. One mistake, and everything could crumble. Anastasia inhaled deeply, centering herself. She had come too far to falter now. The last round began with a roar from the crowd. Every seat was filled, every eye locked on the stage. This was it, the moment everyone had waited for. Dmitri launched forward with reckless fury, his voice breaking through the noise. "This ends now," he shouted. His avatar charged headlong, ignoring strategy, relying only on rage. Sergei followed hesitantly, while Mikhail tried to cover them. Anastasia saw it coming. She knew anger blinded him. With calm precision, she set her trap. Dmitri walked straight into it. His avatar exploded into defeat within seconds. The hall erupted with thunderous applause. Sergei panicked. His movements lost all rhythm, and Anastasia dismantled him easily. Mikhail fought hardest, holding on longer than anyone expected, but even he could not resist the inevitable. Anastasia closed in, delivering the final strike. The screen flashed victory. The hall shook with cheers. The reigning champion had defended her crown once more, in the most spectacular fashion. The lights dimmed as the crowd stood, clapping and shouting her name. Anastasia removed her headset slowly, rising from her seat. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. Across the stage, Dmitri sat frozen, his pride shattered. Sergei stared blankly at the floor. Mikhail sighed heavily, accepting the defeat with quiet resignation. None of them laughed now. None of them mocked. The announcer's voice boomed above the noise. "Your champion, undefeated once again, Valina." Anastasia raised her hand briefly to acknowledge the crowd. Her silence was no longer a shield. Tonight, her presence alone spoke louder than any words. She had faced not only her opponents, but every doubt, every insult, every shadow cast against her. And she had risen above them all. The tournament would end, the arena would empty, the snow would fall again outside. But this night in Moscow would remain unforgettable. A night where respect was no longer demanded, but earned.